going here. Now, Krishna, Arjuna asks Krishna in Bhagavad Gita in second chapter, text 54. Oh Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? So is it a big beard and who is the guy, Chinmayananda, who they found out later on was fooling around with a young girl making his tea? He would say, well, Hari. And Krishna says, surrender unto me. Well, he's talking about Hari. It's another name for Krishna. And Hari means one who takes away. So who takes away? Thieves take away. Okay. When are thieves active? Usually. At night. At night it's dark, isn't it? So when it's dark, everything becomes unknown. So when it says surrender unto Hari, it means surrender unto the unknown. I mean, you went from here all the way over to here by word jugglery. So are they a good word juggler, or can they make a little bit of dust, or some gold image of themselves? So how do you know someone in transcendence? So we see Srila Prabhupada, he was a certified person, had no self-interest, had no material attachment, was simply absorbed in speaking about Krishna. That's a genuine transcendentalist. So that's why these little pastimes matter. I heard Prabhupada tell this in Calcutta. There was a man, his name was Tarun Kanti Ghosh, and he was a newspaper publisher, local newspapers, local language, all over India. Amrita Prakash Bazaar, whatever that's called. Yeah, Patrika. So a number of languages. I think his grandfather was initiated by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur or something like that. And he had been to see some yogi, and the yogi had made an apple. Prapti Siddhi. Let's give him credit for that. Maybe sleight of hand, who knows, but let's give him credit that he made an apple. And Tarun Kanti Ghosh came to see Srila Prabhupada in Calcutta, and he was very impressed. He couldn't get beyond. There was a yogi, and there was no apple, and he made an apple, and there was nothing up his sleeve. He had a gumsha on, so he couldn't, and then there was apple. And Prabhupada, although Prabhupada was humility personified, and we'll tell some stories about that, Govardhan and I was walking down the hall of the Detroit temple. Prabhupada was visiting. And Govardhan said, hey, help me. I said, okay, well, what do you... And Prabhupada had noticed that there was no picture of his Guru Maharaj in his darshan room. And Prabhupada didn't miss a thing. Prabhupada had noticed that there was a picture of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, nice painting of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in the temple room. So Prabhupada had said to Govardhan, put that in my darshan room. And it was a big painting, you know, with a solid gold frame, big gold frame, heavy. So Govardhan asked me, I just happened to be walking by, and he said, hey, can you help me? You know, we're going to put this in Prabhupada's room. We thought Prabhupada was out in the garden taking, you know, his massage. So we come stumbling in there with this big painting. And there was a picture of Lord Nrsinga there. Prabhupada said, you swap that out and you behind. So Prabhupada's sitting like this, the walls behind him, where he wanted the picture of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Govardhan said to Prabhupada, do you want to move? We have this painting, you know, we want to put it. Prabhupada was working on something. He said, no, go ahead. So, you know, we got this big heavy thing and we're trying to get the wire on the nail against the wall. And I said, I know I'm going to be the one who steps in Prabhupada's lap or say, you know, and definitely I'm going to drop this thing. So we're trying to juggle it. Govardhan says, Prabhupada, do you want to move? And Prabhupada says, you know, do it, just do it, you know. So we couldn't get the wire on the nail. And the third time, Govardhan asked Prabhupada, do you want to move? Prabhupada said, what? Prabhupada said, for service, you can stand on my head. And it just came from his heart. It wasn't like artifice that, oh, let me teach my disciples. That was just Prabhupada's. Another time, Prabhupada was leaving the Detroit airport. And if you ever saw devotees, if you ever greeted Prabhupada in an airport, the devotees just took over. I mean, we had flower petals and rose water and devotees distributing books and devotees distributing prasadam and, you know, kirtan with 5 madungas, 15 pairs of kartals. I'm not exaggerating, you know, just took over the place. So, yeah, I can think of so many stories. But anyway, in this one, and the Detroit airport, at least in those days, was set up. You had to go through one area to get to all the individual gates. And it was early in the morning. Prabhupada was actually flying to Chicago. And the devotees just jammed the airport. And you had all these businessmen trying to catch their flights. And the devotees are like, you know, chanting and dancing back. There must have been at least 200. I'm not exaggerating. 200 to 300 devotees, easy. And the businessmen couldn't get through their, you know, and they kind of like push the devotees, and the devotees say, leader wouldn't push him back. And it was just low. Somebody was going to haul off and whack somebody, and it was going to be a brawl right there in the Detroit airport. So Rupa and Prabhupada sitting there. Rupa Nuga stood up. Rupa Nuga Prabhu stood up and said, all ISKCON devotees, all ISKCON devotees, please clear the airport. Not one single devotee moved. You know the only devotee who moved? But Prabhupada picked up his little case and stood up there, you know, thinking I'm an ISKCON devotee. One of my leaders is Prabhupada was completely compliant. You know, the rest of us couldn't, you know. So I mean, Prabhupada was humility personified. But to make the point, Prabhupada, in his role of a teacher has to assert himself sometimes. So this man's going on, Tarun Kanti Ghosh, apple, mystic power, this and that now. And Prabhupada just couldn't get through him, you know. So Prabhupada finally said, I came to America with nothing. Prabhupada had, I think he actually wasn't quite nothing. He had $20 because he sold the Bhagavatam set to the captain of the Jaladuta. And he had 40 rupees, which you couldn't even exchange in those days in America. So he had a sack of coins so he could manage the bus and get to Butler, Pennsylvania. But so Prabhupada said, I had no money. He said, I sat down in the park in New York and I chanted the holy name. And I heard Prabhupada say, he didn't say it quite like this, but one of the first representatives of American officialdom that Prabhupada met was when he sat on this he had a little rug that he sat on and started chanting. And one of New York's finest, one of the local police said, hey, buddy, off the grass. So Prabhupada's sitting on the hot sidewalk with a little pair of cartels and the holy name. And then Prabhupada said, and from that, so many devotees have come. And so many festivals have come. So many beautiful deities have come. So many books. So many temples. And then Prabhupada said, and in every temple, there are so many apples. Apple chutney, apple halva, apple, you know. So the guy makes one apple. Oh, must be Bhagavan. But what about Prabhupada opening temples around the world? So many, I forget, somebody gave me the number one time, but recorded with the Library of Congress, there was something like 14 or 24, I forget the number Prabhupada says, versions of Bhagavad Gita. Didn't make a single devotee. I remember being with Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He was chanting in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we were stepping back, and Tamal, everything had to run nicely. It was good. So we're off the track, but it's okay. Tamal was looking at the setting, how the devotees set up, and the pandal and Radha Damodar and the prasad, and he was checking everything out. Vishnu John Maharaj was leading kirtan. So we were at the edge of the crowd, and a man came up to us, and he looked distinguished, and he introduced himself that he was the chair of the religions department, University of Michigan. I mean, it's a good school materially. So Tamal asked him, have you read Bhagavad Gita? And the professor said, of course. Tamal asked, did you understand it? The guy was a little ruffled. Of course I understood it. Tamal asked him, so what are you going to do? And you watch this puzzlement wash over the man's face. Do the idea that Bhagavad Gita concluded with a call to action, surrender unto me, sarva dharma, didn't even cross the guy's mind. Didn't have it, So my point is that so many versions of Bhagavad Gita, so many yogis came. Nobody became a devotee, became a practical bhakta. So Prabhupada was the greatest of mystics. All right. Oh, this one's nice. I just thought of this. Well, I'll tell that one in a minute. They asked him in New York, newspaper reporter, New York Times, asked Prabhupada, why have you come to America? And Prabhupada gave different answers. Sometimes he would say, to teach what you've forgotten, But they asked Prabhupada, why have you come to America? And Prabhupada said, well, some of my godbrothers went to London and they failed. And some of my godbrothers went to Germany and they failed. So I thought, if I'm going to fail, let me go to a new place. Actually, Prabhupada knew that the whole world was chasing America. And Prabhupada knew that, well, if I can turn America, I can turn the world. Prabhupada said that. He calculated very carefully that everyone's chasing. India, they can't hear anything. And So if I can turn some Americans, I can, and it worked. That's exactly what he did, and it actually worked. So he was a grand strategist. Another time, this one I didn't personally experience. This one I heard on a tape. You can hear it, it's on a tape. Prabhupada's walking in Calcutta in the morning. And there's a Victoria Memorial, you can Google it. It's about 18 stories high. It's a big building. And it was built in honor of Queen Victoria, I think her Golden Jubilee. The man who built it took him 14 years, and he got the name Sir. He was somebody Mukherjee, the architect. So it's called the Victoria Memorial, and it's a huge building. So there's some park around it, and so Prabhupada's walking in the park with the devotees. And Prabhupada notes, he says, when I was a child, a young boy, he doesn't give his age, but I speculate maybe around 10, 12, something like that, preteen. He says, when I was a young boy, he climbed to the top when they were building it. And those buildings in third world or developing world, there's bamboo scaffoldings. You've seen those? And those things creak and sway in the wind. And Prabhupada's going 18 stories, climbed up to the top of the thing. So the devotees on the morning walk say to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada, you must have been very brave. And Prabhupada says, and I'm still brave. Otherwise, how have I come to your country all alone? So those are some narrations about Prabhupada coming to America. Hey, Govardhan, I could use some little water. Thanks a lot, Prabhu. Just for fun, because, devotees, sometimes they say that, well, you had Prabhupada's personal association and, but now, we're bereft of that. But that's a material calculation. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Vaishnavas live eternally in sound. I saw Prabhupada in Chicago. Thanks a lot, Govardhan. I saw Prabhupada in Chicago. It was very far out. Thanks a lot. A devotee asked a question, or a guest, I forget who. And Prabhupada said, second canto, chapter such and such, verse such and such, read the purport. There was the answer. Somebody asked another question. Prabhupada said, Bhagavad Gita, chapter such and such, verse such and such, read the purport. There was the answer. And it went on for half an hour. Question, CC, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, verse such and such, purport, read the purport. And there was the answer. And Prabhupada went on for half an hour like that. So if we read Prabhupada's books, we have his association. We are personally, we are crossing the boundaries of time and space and hearing directly, associating with Srila Prabhupada. So here's an example. Prabhupada came to the Henry Street Temple, Brooklyn. How long do we go for, by the way? Tell me what they... 45 minutes. We end at 1:45. Okay. So, if you ever went to the Henry Street Temple, it wasn't that big. It was also haunted. That's another story. So there were tons of devotees. There were so many devotees. Devotees were sleeping on the fire escape. Devotees were sleeping on the roof. It was crammed full of devotees because Prabhupada was there. And there was a little garden area in back of the temple where Prabhupada's darshan room came right up against it. And so that Prabhupada wasn't disturbed because, summertime, the windows are open and, the noise would, so they made an announcement that we want to guard that little garden area so that nobody goes back there and makes noise and disturbs Srila Prabhupada. So they called for volunteers. I volunteered. So it was my shift was 2:00 in the morning. So I'm back in the garden, 2:00 in the morning. Prabhupada comes out, turns the light on, sits down behind his desk. Now, you know, when it's dark outside and it's light inside, you can't see out, but you can see in very easily. You know, you can see. So I was literally from me to this brahmacharya away from, you know, I was in the garden and there's the wall, but Prabhupada was like that far away, if they even closer. Now, remember, my mission was to keep it quiet, right? So I'm chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And I'm watching Prabhupada. And he picks up, you know, Pradumna would do the Sanskrit and put it on his desk. And Prabhupada would look at it, make any corrections. And then he would sit back, think about it and chant. Then he'd turn on his dictaphone, say something. He'd reach back and get his Bhagavatam with 5 different commentaries, you know, different from Sridhar Swami all the way to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. You know, or he'd pull down the Sanskrit dictionary, he'd pull down this book, that book. And then he would speak and he'd stop back and then, you know. And I was thinking that here I'm getting all the purports of the previous acharyas coming right through Prabhupada's mind. And now he's putting it on his tapes. So I started chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And I was thinking it's like all the rivers flowing out of the Himalayas into the Ganga and into the ocean. So all the wisdom of all the Vedas are pouring down from Prabhupada's mouth onto the pages of Bhagavatam. And I was Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And then I was thinking, and all I have to do is open it up. I just crack the book. And all of that is washing over. Hare Krishna, Krishna. Prabhupada took the glass of water on his desk, threw it out the window, all over. It was like you throw a boot at a cat, yeah, making noise out your window. I was like, Abhishek, come, you know. But, you know, once again, I was nothing but a disturbance. But the fact of the matter is, we just opened Prabhupada's books. And all the previous acharyas, all the great rishis, Vyasadeva himself, and it's pouring and perfectly presented for the modern people. I mean, it's an amazing thing. We have to learn Sanskrit. I mean, it's nice if you know Sanskrit, but it doesn't change anything. So that was blissful. The Prabhupada was walking in Shevad Hills. That's a nice park above the LA Temple. And usually Prabhupada would get out and go clockwise around them. So for some reason this day, Prabhupada went counterclockwise. And you know, what is his name? Prajapati. Have I got it right? Prajapati, the actor? Yeah, he has that senatorial Shakespearean voice, you know? You just know him. And I take those morning walks, he asks great questions. We're in his debt. Anyway, so he's on the morning walk and you hear him say, I say, Srila Prabhupada, when we walk in the park from a different direction and see all the objects from a different angle, it looks like a brand new park. And Prabhupada just busts up. Prabhupada's actually like a belly laugh. Prabhupada said, this is material life. This isn't material life. It is the same thing. We are eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That's all it is. We do it in this body and that body. We do it as Indra. We do it as Indragopa, as a one-celled bug. But that's all it is. But we see it from a different angle and a different body and, whatever. And we think, oh, it's brand new. And in this way, the living entities trapped in the material world. In Detroit, well, there was, and I don't want to mention names. There was a devotee, but I'll mention a few. But there was a devotee. He said, Prabhupada, in this picture, Krishna looks like this. But in this picture, I'll get back to that. Help me remember. But I just thought of this one. They painted a picture, and pictures lifting Govardhan Hill. So he had some muscles, lifting Govardhan Hill, And showed it to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, no. Prabhupada said, he's a little fat from Mother Yasoda's butter. Krishna does it to lift weights for Govardhan Hill. So again, they showed Prabhupada a picture. I was there for this one. And they asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, in this picture, Krishna looks like this. But in this picture, he looks like this. But in this picture, he looks like this. Prabhupada said, don't worry. When you get there, you'll recognize him. Then we asked Prabhupada, there's that famous letter that Prabhupada writes. Somebody asked and it's nice that they were inquiring about their service, but they wrote Prabhupada like there's 24 questions about Tulsi. You can read it in the letter. Everyone should read Prabhupada's letters books. You'll learn how to manage, and you'll learn so much, how to control the mind. Those letters books are just like jewels, that letters book. Anyway, this devotee wrote a bunch of questions, and Prabhupada answered about the 6 of the most important ones. He answered those. And then Prabhupada said, for the rest of the answers, use your common sense. But knowing us oh so well, he then added, and if you don't have common sense, ask someone who does. So Prabhupada knew us. He knew us. This is off the track, but when Prabhupada came to Detroit, now remind me, I want to get back to what was I talking about? The painter? No, I said that one. Remind me, I want to get back to the Sanskrit scholar. Okay. But I don't want to forget this one. We heard that in Los Angeles, they had bathed Prabhupada's feet. You think, having a bunch of disciples. Yeah, I'm thinking of so many stories, and I want to use the time. Having a bunch of disciples is like having a bunch of kids. I raised 2 kids as a single parent, and it's not easy. I got them I raised them. I got them educated. I got them employed. I'm done. I can take sannyas. I did my job, They're out of the house. I remember saying this to the Niranjana Maharaj. I said, I raised kids, they're out of the house. He said, you got disciples for your life. He said, life after life. And it's true. So it's not easy, So Prabhupada, we heard that they'd bathed Prabhupada's feet at the LA temple. And our wonderful temple president, who I can never repay, Govardhan Prabhu, said, hey, let's do that for Prabhupada, So he called somebody in LA and find out how they did it. He sent me out we got a kiddie pool from Kmart. I remember this, it was blue, it had pink ducks painted around us. Those little kiddie pools. So we got him a little kiddie pool and this and that, So Prabhupada arrived, he sat down on the Vyasasan, blissful kirtan, Govardhan said, I went out and got this, brought in. Prabhupada could understand, here's what we're doing. So we put that down. Govardhan did the bathing. So I put the pool down. Prabhupada put his feet out, over the, and Govardhan put the milk in a conch and was going to pour it on Prabhupada's feet, milk with rose petals. Prabhupada said, socks off. We were going to bathe his feet with his socks on. It was, note to self, socks off next time. Then Govardhan poured the water. Oh, Prabhupada winced. It had come right out of the ice box. It was ice cold. Warm the milk, So, I mean, it's just a simple example. But when Prabhupada arrived in LA, maybe I mentioned this, the first time I saw Srila Prabhupada, I was just, a spaced out kid. So we saw everybody get off the plane, blissful kirtan led by Vishwanath Maharaj. Everybody gets off the plane. No Prabhupada. We're at the wrong gate. We were at the wrong gate. And Prabhupada got off with Purushottam and took a taxi back to the LA temple. I mean, it was not easy. When Prabhupada, Ashram Maharaj used to be Babru, but Ashram Maharaj told me this. When Prabhupada came to Hawaii one time, they took the umbrella over the Vyasa sun. They took it off. It was a big, heavy thing, They took it off, lugged it all the way out to the airport. When Prabhupada, in those days, you used to come down the gate, and then you'd walk over the tarmac. And somehow they got over, then they had it over Prabhupada. And Prabhupada spoke to the press, and the devotee climbed up behind and held it over Prabhupada. Prabhupada looked at it askance a couple times. Then, Prabhupada came back from the airport to the temple. They raced back ahead. They're there with the umbrella, got the umbrella over Prabhupada. But Prabhupada sits down on the Vyasa-san. They climb behind and they're holding the umbrella. Finally, Prabhupada looks at the devotee and says, I don't think it's going to rain in here. Oh, Prabhupada. So this other professor, this was in Detroit, and he was trying to impress Prabhupada. And he said, I say, Swamiji, is it Krishna? Is it Krishna? Is it Krishna? Prabhupada said, don't worry. He knows who's calling. So Prabhupada, he could see through, He could get to the heart of the matter. In Detroit. Not in Detroit, in LA. You know where the gift shop is in LA, upstairs above the restaurant? And then Prabhupada's garden is over here. That garden used to be a different arrangement. There wasn't that big fountain. It was a lawn and then flowers around the border. And then there was Prabhupada's seat. And Prabhupada used to put chairs out there and different professors or, whatever it was, a local assemblyman or, big, whatever. Prabhupada used to meet a lot of people out in the garden. So where the gift shop is up above used to be the Brahmachari ashram. And if you lean out the window, you could hear Prabhupada in the garden. You could hear what Prabhupada was saying. So I don't know, there's probably around 25 brahmacharis in those days in LA. And we used to lean out the window. And, if somebody held you by your dhoti, back of your dhoti, you could lean, and you could hear perfectly well. So and we used to take turns, we would rotate and hanging out the window, all along there, you probably had 10 brahmacharis hanging out there and looked like a bunch of monkeys in a barrel leaning out, and rotating. And Keshava was the temple commander, Karanda's brother. And Keshava used to be a hell's angel, by the way. You didn't argue with Keshava. So he said, come on, you guys look like a barrel of monkeys, and Prabhupada's representing a respectable institution, and he's meeting with important people, and it doesn't look good. You got to get out of the windows. And we were heartbroken, but we thought, well, he's right. We don't want to embarrass Prabhupada, and all right, we won't do it. So the very next day, Prabhupada's sitting in the afternoon, comes out, sits down. He's got some professors from UCLA, USC, this and that. They're all out there. Prabhupada sits down, looks up, turns to Keshava, says, "Where are the brahmacharis? Go and get them." You know, we were in Prabhupada wanted us to hear. He wanted us, he wasn't just preaching to them. He wanted us, here's how you do it, We were in ecstasy. Sometimes just look up. 5:45. Wow. Well, this one's blissful. I'll just say a few more. Sri Govinda was the temple president in Chicago. And the old temple used to be in Evanston. The first one was in a little apartment with no heat. We knit the caps and mittens for Lord Jagannath because there was the Jagannath deities because there was no heat. Anyway, the temple, it was a nice idea. When you walked up these steps and there were a bunch of doors, like 4 doors that could open up, and you went into a big lobby and there was a mezzanine, a balcony. And his idea was that we would throw flower petals from the balcony. So when Prabhupada walked into the lobby, these flower petals would fall. And we practiced with torn newspaper because you got to get it right. You don't want to do it too early. You don't want to do it too late. You want it to fall down as Prabhupada's walking. I mean, it's a very nice scene, So we practice. And remind me, I want to tell us about Prabhupada and the amplifying system. So anyway, and there was a devotee who blew the conch when Prabhupada's car pulled up. And then another devotee blew a conch when Prabhupada was at the top of the stairs opening the door. And then we knew you count to 4 and then drop the flower. It was worked on test. We did the whole thing. Prabhupada arrives. They blow the conch. Prabhupada gets to the top of the stairs. They blow the conch. When Prabhupada was just about to walk through the door, a young lady came out, a young mother holding her baby. And, she was like a deer in the headlights. There's Prabhupada and all these sannyasis walking up. The sannyasis are glowering at her, She's a young girl. She panicked. She froze. Prabhupada opened the door and gestured that you go. Prabhupada held the door for her, and she walked through, and all the devotees showered all the flowers on the Mataji with the baby. I mean, you could see the smoke coming out of his ears. There's $300 worth of flower petals, And Prabhupada understood the whole thing. Prabhupada just started to laugh, Then when he got inside, Prajatos? To appreciate, you have to know, Prajatos. He's one prickly guy, I'll tell you. So, and he was at one of the early audio, and he wanted to get the definitive recording of Prabhupada singing Jai Radha Madhava. And he had this whole, in those days, everything was big. He had this whole, it looked like a NASA launch center set up by Prabhupada's Vyasa son. Jai Radha Madhava, Jai Shri Shri Kurnitai. Jai Lord Nrsingadev, Jai Shri Sita Ram Lakshmana. So, because it's time for prasadam, we'll tell one more and then we'll end. But anyway, so he had this whole setup. He had headphones with an antenna. He was doing check, check, check for days. Check, check, check. Prabhupada came, greeted the deities, took Charnamrita, sat down on the Vyasasan, picked up his kartals. Prajatos flicked the switch, poof! Oh, it's just like the cartoon movies. A puff of black smoke came up. He blew out something. And Prabhupada just began to laugh. He didn't sing Jai Radha Madhava that first morning. He said, this is material life. Big arrangement, but no result. And that was the lecture Prabhupada gave. So, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. The last thing, we'll end with this, but Tamal Krishnamurti told me this. He had a lot of nice stories. At the old LA temple, La Cienega, there was a small anteroom off the temple, and Prabhupada would take the Sunday feast with the devotees, a senior devotee, visiting temple president, so many different things. And I'm just thinking of so many stories. Anyway, and Prabhupada would distribute. He'd take off his plate. He have, take a samosa, take a little nibble and give it, and like that. So he gave, Tamal Krishnamurti was sitting right here next, and Prabhupada was on a little raised seat, Tamal's here, and the ring of devotees around. So Tamal took a little bite, Prabhupada took a little bite out of a gulab jamun, like a real gulab jamun, big, like a nice juicy. He took a little bite and put it on Tamal's plate. And Tamal Krishnamurti was just savoring it. In those days, your first plate you didn't even taste. Second plate, you slowed down to the speed of the mind. The third place, you began to distinguish flavors and shapes, We took a lot of prasadam. So Tamal went through and he was transferring it reverentially from plate to plate. Now, sitting next to him was Jai Gopal Prabhu, who got killed in a car accident, so be careful. And Jai Gopal was a famous prasadam hound. He was in Laguna Beach. We'd all go on Harinam. Sometimes he would eat the entire Raj Bhog offering. We'd come back, he'd be passed out with turmeric stains on his mouth, and there'd be no prasadam, So anyway, Tamal Krishnamurti told me Prabhupada sitting here, Tamal's here, Jai Gopal's there. Tamal is reverentially transferring this gulab jamun. And he said he was looking at Prabhupada's ears. So he was turned this way. And he was thinking how Prabhupada's ears were shaped like the Buddha. Prabhupada had a very nice little long earlobe, just, one of the different signs of a special, what is a Mahapurush? Is a special personality, So he was looking at Prabhupada's ear. And then he was thinking how Prabhupada's ear was like a transcendental radar dish for catching Shabda Brahman, So he was in a blissful meditation on Prabhupada's ear. And while he was in that rapture, Jai Gopal reached over, stole his gulab jamun. And Tamal, he was a young man, and we were young, and snapped. And he grabbed Jai Gopal and was going to whack him. But he said he had the wherewithal. Prabhupada sitting right there. So he said, Prabhupada, can I hit him? Can I hit him? Prabhupada said, what did he do? Prabhupada said, he stole my gulab jamun. Prabhupada said, Vaikuntha qualifications. So there's a little something about Srila Prabhupada. And you can access him. You just open the books. That's all you have to do. Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Sorry, Krishna.
We're going to have a 5-minute break while we get the Krishna.